have Javier Goyeneche, the founder of Ecoalf and defender of eco-fashion, who's here with us. He was named the Social Innovator of the Year 2020 by the Schwab Foundation for Social Entrepreneurship, and also Desiree Pacheco, who's Professor of Entrepreneurship here at IESE. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And Javier, so I think your story, what you've done, it's really an example of innovation and commitment. And but before we get into that, I just want to say I love your clothing.
Thank you very much.
Excellent line coming up. Before we jump right into it,
Thank you very much.
Couldn't forget to say that amazing. So with what you're doing, it's really amazing to making waste and recycling this into clothing. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your founding story and how this all came about.
Well, I wanted to create like a truly sustainable fashion company back in 2009. I believe the most sustainable thing to do was not to keep on using natural resources. So recycling could be a solution. We're able to make like this new generation of recycled products with the same quality and design as the best non-recycled. No? The problem is that when we went to the market in 2010, there were no cool recycled fabrics. Fabrics were only recycled in a very small percentage and they were not very fashionable in terms of texture. So we've had to be developing fabrics for the last decade, over 500, 100% recycled fabrics we have developed so far.
Javier, I just wanted to ask, in general, the apparel or fashion industry doesn't have a very good record in terms of sustainability, environment, water, responsibility, name it, supply chain, right? I mean, like the whole list. Is that changing though? You took a pretty radical way, but in the industry overall, do you see change there?
I think absolutely. I think since when we started till now, and especially over the last years, I think there's a big change. I think there's a lot of companies trying to go in that direction. I always say that the big change will come when the big players take real action. At the end, Ecoalf can make noise, Ecoalf can show that it's possible, but at the end, it's the big companies who have the resources, the money, the teams, and the volume to really make a change. But the problem right now is that the fashion industry has a business model which is not working. Because it's about buying, throwing, a new trend every Thursday, discount, promotion, Black Friday. So it doesn't matter if you use a sustainable fabric. It's the business model behind, it's not sustainable.
Well, my mom knew how to do sustainable fabric because she just handed them down from one kid to the other.
Yes, indeed.
That's the most sustainable thing.
Yeah, that is.
That the shoe you get from your father, who's got from his grandfather, that's the most sustainable product. Absolutely.
It works.
I agree.
Desiree, a question for you. What do you think defines business commitment with sustainability? Is it just a matter of investment, or how can we make this really happen?
Good question. I think commitment is something that we see in so many different areas of a company, and I would say that commitment is something that you see throughout the value chain. Right? You don't see commitment marginally or in one side of the business. You see it strategically, number one. It comes from above. So commitment needs to come from above when it's about sustainability or about anything else. So that's one. Two, it needs to be integrated within the organization. It needs to permeate the entire organization. And three, not only within the organization, we see commitment in the entire value chain. And so the more vertically integrated as a company is, which, speaking of fashion, we see the opposite in that model, the more committed you are, right? Because it's showing that you care about that process, that you care enough that you own it to be yours and to take care of it as well.
I have the idea, I told you I'm a bit cynical. I have the idea that to be responsible means to pay more. In general, so I ask you, can you challenge that? Are there some factors, are there some sectors where that is not the case? And tell me that this is not just a rich people's problem,
It's a really good point.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if Javier wants to take this first. I'm happy
Maybe
to
we
talk
do
about
have to
it
pay
too.
more. Maybe we do have to pay more. I don't know. Maybe that's part of the deal.
Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. That's the reality. Okay. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit when it comes to sustainability, what we call win-win solutions. Energy efficiency is a win-win right there. Resource efficiency in general is a win-win. You reduce resources, you reduce cost. But not all opportunities are win-wins, unfortunately. We also have win-lose. And in these win-lose opportunities, who's losing? And that's the question. Who's the loser? Is the loser the environment? Well, very often, unfortunately, it is. Sometimes it's others. And so we need to think about how can we rebalance those win-lose relationships so those who are somewhat losing can come up a bit above. And maybe those that are winning don't win so much.
Yeah.
So we give the rise to the others. So I have much more to add here,
Yeah.
but I realize we're short in time.
Yeah, but most people who win like to win a whole lot, you know? They don't just like to win a little bit.
That's the question, you know, you have a pie and how
Yeah.
big do you want to make it? And there are trade-offs. And like I said, not always in sustainability you have trade-offs, but very often you do. In fact, this is the research that I do is about this, is how do we create incentives, new rules of the game, et cetera, to understand how we transform those payoff structures. Because the way we currently have them set them up in many of our markets and capitalistic systems, it's a way they themselves are not sustainable, unfortunately.
Javier.
But you have a point. I mean, it's
Yeah,
obvious.
absolutely.
I mean, electrical car is expensive, organic food
Yeah.
is expensive, sustainable fashion is more expensive. At the end of the day, it's not fair, and it shouldn't be that way, but right now it's that way.
Have you been to Whole Foods in the United States? I mean, it's
Absolutely
all the
not.
rich people shopping there and all the
Yeah.
poor people working there.
Yeah.
You know?
But I'd like to add to this that this is, the way I see this is, it's a time-based
Yeah.
process, right? That we see this in so many other markets, not just sustainability, where initially, yes, the prices are higher because there's less volume. But as we start to see volume increase and economies of scale take place, I expect that we're going to also see those economies of scale here. Right now, we're not there scaling because what we have is a lot of these smaller players taking care and leading a lot of this change. Once the larger players, which many of them are, for example, in apparel, they're getting involved, not to the level where we would want it to be, but definitely heading the right direction, then we'll see these economies, and we should be able to make it more affordable.
Yeah, and you also have something working in favor of you, which I look at my nephew, you know, who's just out of college, 23 years old, and he, and probably his nieces too, but I haven't talked to them about it, I've talked to the nephew, you know, is pretty attentive to things in terms of purchasing and a bigger picture. So, I mean, I think you do have that in your favor too.
And I think, I'm sorry.
No, I think absolutely right. I think young generations are much more aware. No? They have much more information, and it's amazing. No, when you go to schools and you speak about these topics to 11-year-olds, and they understand it so quickly. No, so it's very important. Yeah. Great.
One last question, Javier, because earlier we spoke with Mike Rosenberg, this idea. Now we have a whole event dedicated to sustainability, economies of scale. Maybe years ago we didn't have this. We're talking about the abilities of CEOs. What can CEOs do to bring this, to make this change happen? What can we do to bring sustainability more on the forefront in the next years?
Well, I always say that I've been very lucky because I've had shareholders which have supported every time I've made a decision that was not profitable in the short term. But I always say the same thing. I always say to the board, every time we've taken a decision that it was good for the planet, it's ended up being good for Ecoalf. Everywhere, every time. But I think some CEOs are not so lucky. So I think a lot of CEOs, unfortunately, are measured in the short term. Their job, their bonus, all the career is based on a 6-month plan. No? And so probably they don't have the support to make those decisions. So I think what we need is more than CEOs, which I'm sure a lot of them would like to go in that direction. We need shareholders willing to support the CEOs taking those decisions.